Benjamin, I work for Ubisoft and I'm in charge of the player intelligence department here, which encompasses everything that's related to customer insights. So it means business intelligence, playtest, but everything about market research, really. I hear a lot about data today, but the truth is that during most of your development process, you don't have any data to look at. So anyway, data will be useless until very late. So, but there are many other things that you can do, and I'm going to talk about that today. First, about Ubisoft, you probably know us, or you probably know some of these games. We've been making video games for 30 years now, and we have sold more than 500 million games around the world. And believe it or not, this is not entirely due to chance. It's also due to, some people have talent in this company, but we also care a lot about our customers. We are a very player-centric organization, and I give you here a few facts. So we are a large company. We have 9,000 employees and 30 studios around the world. And what we call player intelligence regroups roughly 130 people over the company. Every year we collect data. We collect 20 billion data points to understand how our customers behave inside our games. We invite more than 5,000 playtesters to our facilities to test the games. And you probably heard about Far Cry 4, our last Far Cry in the series. Just for this game, we had more than 60 external playtests, meaning that we give a lot of attention to what people say about the game and how they appreciate it. What I would like to try today is to convince you that it's something you should do too, and that you don't need to be Ubisoft to do it. Everybody can do that. First question, why should you test your game? It might seem obvious for some people, but I talk to many independent game developers who don't do any tests until the very end of the process, but then sometimes it's too late. The reason why you should test your game is that these are real facts. 93% of all the American drivers believe that they drive better than the average, which doesn't really make sense, you know? People are overconfident. These are trivial examples, but I checked within my company. I can tell you it's true everywhere. Everybody believes that what he's doing is right and that it's going to work, but unfortunately, it's rarely the case. The second factor is that every day, on iOS only, you have 500 games that are being released. You will only be one of these 500, but you don't want to be just that. You want to be in the top 10 of the store, I guess, so you want to limit your risk. There is no recipe for success, there is no guarantee for success, but there are many ways to reduce the risks. And I think everybody should do that, because if you don't do that, you are putting all your money and your time on luck, and that's not the best thing to do. So the good news is that you don't need to be rich, you don't need to be a large company to do user research and testing, and I'm going to give you today a framework of things that I believe are useful and very cheap for independent developers, especially in the mobile gaming industry. So there are many ways to look at it. I could do a list of all the things we are doing at Ubisoft, but I think the best way to do it is to go through the development process of a game, starting from the very, very early stage when you don't have a game, you just have an idea. What can you do? Until after launch. I won't go into all analytics detail. It's relatively high level, but we can chat later. So what do you do when you have no data at all about your game? How can you assess an ID? The good news is that this phase before the game is actually, for me, one of the most important, because that's where all the important decisions are made. So the first thing, that's my advice, by the way. You don't have to follow anything, but I think it works. You should start with your target. You should know who you are making the game for. There are two reasons for that. The first reason is that you can't make a game for everyone. It doesn't exist. League of Legends, maybe people play League of Legends, but not everyone play League of Legends. Potatoes is a nice vegetable, but not everybody eats potatoes. You need to know who is going to play. And don't think you are representative. That's one of the biggest mistake everybody does, by the way, especially marketing people, and I am a marketing guy, but also game developers and designers, believing that your experience is the right experience for everyone. I can give you a concrete example. In the studio, I talked about LOL, but we have many MOBA players here in Singapore. And when we work on franchises like Assassin's Creed, which are more mainstream games, story-based, these people tend to believe that if you do a game like Assassin's Creed with a very light PvP, nobody will be interested in that because they are used to hardcore things. But if you talk to a console player about hardcore PvP, he will be scared. So you need to know that. I will give you a very concrete example. We released this game recently. It's called Monkey King. It's a free-to-play runner that was targeting China in the first place. And when they came to me, we had a day one drop of more than 80%, which is not great. Meaning that, yeah, most of the people would play actually less than 3 minutes. So the guys told me, I don't understand what's going on. The game is good. Actually, it was not that bad. And I told them, who did you make this game for? And what they answered to me was, for these kind of guys, 20 to 25-year-old male. I said, why? And they said, because when we commute to work in the morning, we see this type of guy playing runner games. And I said, okay, are you sure? Because then we looked into the data. So we have data, but you can Google it also to find some information about who's playing what. We realized that the real target for runner game most of the time was 8 to 12-year-old girls and boys, or maximum people from 12 to 18. The difference is that these people don't play at all for the same reason. If you ask this guy on the left, why is he playing a mobile game? He's looking for, they really are fond of RPG dimension. They want something that is non-repetitive. They want some mature art. They don't want, childish art design. But if you talk to this kind of target, the younger one, the twins as they are called, what they want is a clear mechanism to beat the high score. They want a very huge social dimension. They want very simple UI, and they want female characters. We had none of this in the game. So, and I remember I put the game in the hands of little girls like that, and they simply couldn't play. And their first question was, how do I choose a monkey girl? Because I want to play with a monkey girl. And we started with this day one drop-off, and immediately after the new build, it dropped to 72%, which is way better for a game. So now that you got my point, you need to know your target. The second step that you can do is that since you don't have a game that works yet, what I suggest is that you identify benchmarks that are successful. When I say successful, I don't mean nice or good games. It's important, but I'm really talking about games that had a high number of downloads and high ARPD, revenues per download. One of the many tools that you can use is App Annie, of course, but if you go outside of this room, you will find dozens of companies that will offer you analytics, some of them for free. And that's a good way to spot good games from the competition. When you know that, play the game, analyze it, and try to understand why these games are successful. So what I suggest is that you focus on 3 things. First, the onboarding experience. Because for a mobile game, especially a free-to-play game, you don't have 2 chances. People will try. You have 30 seconds. If they don't like, they will go. So look at how people are onboarded in the game. Look at UI. Look at how simple it is. Look at where they put the store to make it obvious but not too aggressive. Look at the retention drivers. Because the secret is that if you don't have retention, you can do all the ad, all the things you want in monetization, you will not get money anyway. But if you do that, it's only hypothesis at this stage. You don't know exactly what made a success. So step 3 is to check your assumptions. You go in the street. I do that really. We take mobile phone and we go in the street. And you find people that are from the target we mentioned before. and you watch them play. You make them play, and you understand why they like the game. It's the best thing that you can do, seeing the people experience the game. And then you will be able to have a first idea of what you need to put in your game to be successful. I use a lot this kind of template as a checklist before we start developing a game. You start with your target, and then inside each column, acquisition, retention, monetization, you check that inside your game you will have all the features that will drive acquisition, that will keep the people inside the game, and that will make them pay. For instance, if you have as a target young people, you need to know that these people rarely pay by themselves. They need to ask mom and dad to have some money to pay. So your monetization should be ready for this kind of behaviors. So you don't have your game, but you have this, and I think at this stage you are ready to go. Important. It's something I see a lot. Don't try to put everything in your game. Now, many game designers who are, passionate people and very curious want to do a runner who is a city builder with a puzzle game and everything at the same time. If you get one thing very right, then you can add up something. Tencent, for instance, they had a very successful runner called Gunzi Dash, WeChat Dash in Europe, and they started very progressively with a runner, and they added mode, they added PvP and all that, and maintaining the success. That's the way to go, I think. Sometimes people talk about focus groups. You gather 6 people in a group and in a room, and you ask them, okay, what should I do in my game? I don't think that's a good idea to do it at this stage. The reason is that, first, there is no statistical significance in 8 people in a room, and people have no idea what they want. That's the truth. To illustrate that, I'm going to talk about a company. It's more for you guys than you ladies. It's Gillette. It's a very famous story because Gillette is very much about marketing and focus groups. So in 1990, they gathered people in a room and they told them, you have a shaver with 1 blade. What about 2 blades? One for rough cutting, another one for the finishes. People said, wow, that's awesome. And they created a sensor. And the sensor was a huge success, more than several $1 billion in 1 year. 8 years later, they took people in a room and they asked them, you know what? What we could do is 2 blades plus a 3rd blade to caress your skin after it's very clean. And people said, wow, awesome. And they did the Mach 3 blades. If you look at the press at the time, the newspapers start to say, 3 blades, it's a bit too much. They are abusing a bit the system. So they took people in a room and they asked them, what about 4 blades? And then people said, no, 4 blades, it's not, we don't want to do that. So what happened is that Wilkinson came out with the Wilkinson Quattro with 4 blades, huge success. So Gillette, in the end, they said, okay, you know what? Let's not listen to people. Let's do the fusion. 5 blades, and we're all good. So it's a huge success. But what I mean by that is, if you take people and you ask them, what would be a cool feature for my game? Anything that you can propose, they will say yes. So I don't think it's the best idea right now. What you can try, though, it's called unfocused groups. It's an IDEO concept. You take people who either hate your game or they are huge fans of your game. And this guy might bring out innovative ideas or disruptive innovation, if it's what you are looking for. But disruptive is not always a guarantee for success. Remember, great opportunities are not seen with your eye, but with your mind. No, I don't think so. I think only user experience is concrete. So what you need to do as early as possible is to create occasions to see the people, to see your target audience play, to understand them. That's only that way that you can really create a game that will talk to them. I want to mention 2 different things now, alternatives that we are using at Ubisoft. Leveraging a crowd of experts. It's something that is very much documented online. The theory behind that is that 10 experts meaning your colleagues, people who know vaguely what games are about, more than people who don't know what it is. 10 experts are better than 1. And if you poll people about, for instance, what should be a good innovation in Assassin's Creed Syndicate that has been announced recently? If you have hundreds of ideas coming from experts and then that the experts solve these ideas, you might, in the end, get very good ideas. It's cheap, it's easy to do, and a good way to do it are ideation tournaments. This tool on the left is free, it's done by researchers here in Singapore, and I strongly encourage you to try it and to use it. It can help you get there. Finally, and I think that's the best way today to source your ideas and to make sure it can be successful, it's crowdfunding. We don't do it at Ubisoft, but you know that Star Citizen is a huge, incredible success. It's not only good because you get money, but it's also good because people do the ultimate pledge of interest when they put money in a project. They already buy it, because most of the time people will tell you, wow, that's interesting, but as soon as money comes into the picture, they're out. So do that, I think, as much as possible. Oh, I need to take a selfie for the website. I hope you don't mind. You can please try to look happy. That would be awesome. You will be on the Ubisoft website. Okay. 1, 2. Thank you very much. My communication director will be so happy. Early development. Now you have a game. It's shorter after. I know we are a bit late, but don't worry. Early development. Now that you have some playable elements, what should you do? Playtest as soon as possible. So for me, the right moment to start playtesting is when you, as a designer, you are happy with the feature you are making. If you know it's crap, don't go in the street. People will tell you it's crap, and you will say, okay, I know it. When you're happy, go in the street. But you have many biases when people play a game, and I will come to that right after. A good way to limit these biases is to make them not test one, but several games at the same time, including very good ones. So if you want to do an open world shooter game on mobile, you can say, okay, my benchmarks are Far Cry 4 and Skyrim. And then on various game dimensions, you ask people to assess your game. And your target over time will be to reach the maximum. After this phase, if you get there, you can say, apparently my game is very good. I talked about biases. The first one is culture and self-enhancement. When you go see people and you ask for their opinion, they try to do well. So most of the time, they give you good reviews, a bit too much. I can give you an example. Recently, I went to do a street play test in Bukit Batok driving center. Try to get their driving license. And the game was a mobile game based on color. So the background was changing, and when the background color was the same as the picture, you would click on it. And I tried to play with this guy, and he was scoring terribly. He was obviously having a terrible time, and I asked him, okay, do you enjoy the game? Is it good? Is it good? He said, wow, it's awesome, I love it. Obviously, he couldn't play because he was colorblind, so he couldn't see anything, but the guy wouldn't tell me thing. So I had to spot it. I guess he wouldn't tell me he was colorblind in a driving center because it was a bit a secret for him. But also between Singapore and France, we noticed that there is a huge difference of score in playtest. Here, people try to be polite and not to hurt your feelings. So when we get a 4 out of 5 in Singapore, it's very frequent to get a 3 out of 5 in Europe. Also, scores change in time. People like to test prototypes because they can really see that it doesn't look like a game, and they give you good ratings. As soon as your game starts to look good, then they will be much more harsh with you. So you need to be aware of this kind of things. And finally, playtests are not statistically relevant, and that's not the point. The idea of a playtest is for you as developer to look at audit is to look at outliers. If you find people who really enjoy your experience a lot versus people who hated it, you need to focus on this guy and to understand why. For instance, we know that in Assassin's Creed, people like to walk on the roof more than being in the street. We know these kind of things because we can see it on playtest. Conclusion, as designers, you need to find ways to put them on the roof, and then the experience is way better. Once again, observe people. Now I think it's also the right time to prepare your tracking. So I'm going to be very short on this one, even if you collect billions of data points. What's important is that don't track just for saying I have data. Track with objectives. Define your target KPIs, especially in terms of how many people do you want to keep after day one, how many people, what conversion rate you want, and what ARPD you want. Focus on retention. That's the key thing in any game. You want to keep people. And too much data is useless, and it happens a lot. Now, soft launch. For me, the soft launch is when you launch the game in a limited territory. So for instance, I don't know, let's say in Thailand, and not in the whole world, because you want to test these KPIs, and you want to test your game with real data, with a sufficient amount of people. And the idea that you are asking yourself here is, should I invest more? That's the bottom line. Because for the first time, you will be able to test your acquisition. You will be able to see if with limited investment in a limited territory, you can make it in the top 10 of a store. If it's the case, it's very good, because that's when you get virality and that's when you can grow very big. If it's not the case, it means that to get there, it probably costs a lot of money, but maybe your revenues per download will not be up to par. Retention. It's the first time that you can really see in a real environment if people stay in your game. And are they also sharing your game? And or do you see at this point, maybe if it's a game that is level-based, do you see any drop in the funnel that you could still correct? That's the last opportunity you have. Finally, monetization. You cannot really test monetization before your game is live, because people, buying something is a very intimate thing, and you need to be in real situation. So that's the time where you are going to say, okay, my retention, my monetization is according to my levels or not. If all these questions are green, then it means that you have a potential gold mine in your hands, and you can invest in marketing, and you can go beyond that. Now, post-launch. Let's say your game is a success. Congratulations. There are many things that you can do, but overall, once the game is live, you want to optimize it. So you can do many things. I'm just going to focus on two different things. A/B testing. So A/B testing is changing one variable in your game at a time, sending it to two different clusters of people, and monitoring especially one KPI. And you can see which one works best. It's been done for ages in e-commerce. It's still very early in the gaming industry, but it works very well. Finally, it's something we do at Ubisoft a lot. When you have a lot of data, use it to prepare for the next title. This example on the left comes from Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Segmentation or behavioral analysis is very useful, because if you split your game in activities, what kind of activities people consume. And for us, it's important because in open world games, you have a lot of ways of playing, and people don't play the same way. If you know that, you can know, for instance, that we had people who loved the naval gameplay, and they only did that. We had people who were assassins, so they mostly spend time killing people, so much violence, killing people in fancy ways. But once we know that, we know which features are useful, which features are not played, and if you put the cost in front of that, you know that you will be able to cut things that people don't play and to enforce the very popular aspects of the game. And that's how the next episode will be hugely successful. Conclusion. If I had only 3 points to take away, it's the first one. Do user research, because it will reduce your risks. It's not a guarantee for success, but your risks will go down, and success will be a bit closer to reach. The second advice is define a vision of success. Don't go in the blind. When you are an entrepreneur, or even if you're not an entrepreneur, you tend to be overconfident and to be scared of the risk and the truth. You need to say what is success, and to have go or no-go triggers based on that. And finally, yeah, beware of overconfidence, because we all suffer from it, and knowing your customer is the best way to prevent that. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? I'm not sure. No. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Benjamin.
much.